Silent final hours. Lawrence Beesley was a second-class passenger on the RMS Titanic. This is his story. The journey from Queenstown had been smooth and uneventful. We sailed beneath clear skies, with only the occasional shift in wind, from the west, sometimes southwesterly, but never enough to trouble the great ship. The air, though, had turned biting cold, especially on Sunday. After dinner that evening, it was nearly unbearable to remain on deck. I had just settled into my berth, no more than 10 minutes past, when I felt the ship tremble slightly, a gentle jar. Moments later, there was a second jolt, slightly stronger, but still not alarming. Even the most nervous passenger would have dismissed it. Then the engines fell silent. My first thought was mechanical, that perhaps we'd thrown a propeller. Curious, I slipped on my dressing gown and made my way to the deck. A few others had done the same, gathering quietly in the cold night to wonder why we'd stopped. There was no panic, only puzzled faces. I peered into the smoking room and noticed a card game still in progress. I entered and asked if they had heard anything. They had felt the jolt too, and through the window, one of them had caught a glimpse, a towering iceberg passing ominously close, sliding into the night. Calm before impact. They thought we had only brushed against it, a harmless glancing blow, and had paused merely as a precaution to check for damage. None of us imagined the truth, that beneath the surface, a jagged piece of submerged ice had torn open the Titanic's hull. The card game in the smoking room resumed without concern, and I quietly returned to my cabin, reading as I waited for the engines to stir back to life. I never saw those card players, or the curious faces gathered around them, ever again. A short while later, the sound of footsteps and low voices drew me once more to the corridor. More passengers had awoken, puzzled by the sudden silence where constant vibration had once been, a silence louder than noise. Back on deck, I noticed it clearly this time. The ship tilted slightly, bow dipping forward. Still unaware of the danger, I assumed some compartments had taken on water, nothing more. I returned below to dress more warmly. As I fastened my collar, a firm voice rang out down the corridor. All passengers on deck with life belts on. We obeyed calmly, tying on the bulky belts over our coats, still believing it a temporary precaution. We thought the captain was simply being thorough and that we'd soon be back in our beds. There was no panic, no shouting. The sea was impossibly calm. The sky was sharp and clear. The ship seemed frozen in place, serene, undisturbed, except for the subtle tilt few even noticed. There was no smoke, no rush, no visual cue of the nightmare unfolding. It felt impossibly like just another cold night at sea. Silent realization spreads. She just lay there, still and motionless, as though patiently waiting for a minor issue to be resolved. One final adjustment before continuing her majestic journey. But moments later, the calm gave way to quiet unease. We saw the covers being removed from the lifeboats, ropes being uncoiled, and crewmen taking their stations. That was the moment we began to understand. This was not a drill. My instinct told me to return to my cabin for more clothing and perhaps some money, but the steady stream of passengers flooding up the stairways made me stop. I didn't want to add to the congestion. Then a command echoed across the deck. All men stand back from the boats. All ladies to the next deck below. And so, we obeyed. The men stepped aside silently, many leaning on the railings, others pacing slowly in thought. The boats were swung out and began their slow descent. At the A deck, where the women had gathered, they stepped in one by one, quietly, though some clung to their husbands and refused to part. In a few heartbreaking cases, they were separated and forced into the boats, but in others no one had the will or authority to insist. Glancing over the railing, I watched a lifeboat from the rear already gliding into the night. Near me, boats creaked and groaned as new ropes slid through pulleys, lowering them 70 feet down toward the Black Sea. an officer called out sharply. "When you're afloat, row round to the companion ladder and stand by with the others for orders." "Aye, aye, sir," came the response, but deep down, I doubted any boat would return. Once afloat, the true condition of the Titanic could not be ignored. The lifeboats, mostly filled with women, rowed away instinctively, knowing full well the danger of remaining near such a massive sinking vessel. The suction alone could pull them under. Still, there was no chaos, no screams, no wild rush. Just quiet voices, solemn movements, and a haunting stillness in the night. Not a single woman broke into sobs. Not a single man pushed forward. It was tragedy in its most silent, dignified form. Edge of realization. Everyone seemed to grasp the truth so gradually that we were truly in danger, that at any moment we could be in the freezing ocean with nothing but our life belts to hold us up, praying for a passing ship to see us. And yet, despite the looming terror, there was no chaos, no shouting, no desperate scramble, just quiet composure as one by one, lifeboats filled with women and children dipped away into the blackness. Then, a whisper moved among us. Men were being allowed into boats on the starboard side. I stood on the port side. Many around me crossed over to see if it was true. I stayed. Minutes later, a crewman's voice rose again. "Any more ladies?" I leaned over and saw lifeboat 13 level with A deck, half filled. "Any more ladies?" The call came once more. None appeared. A sailor glanced up and asked, "Any ladies on your deck, sir?" "No," I replied. "Then you'd better jump in," he said without pause. I jumped, landing hard in the boat's bottom as they shouted, "Lower away!" Just then, 2 women were rushed forward and helped in, and a tiny baby, no more than 10 months old, was passed down into waiting arms. The descent began, slow and creaking, the sailors yelling out, "Level, aft, stern, both together," guiding us through the dark as the ropes strained under our weight. But when we were just 10 feet from the sea, our calm cracked for a brief, heart-pounding moment. Right beneath us, the condenser's exhaust pipe blasted a torrent of steaming water from the ship's side, relentless and violent, and it was aimed directly where we were about to land. Seconds from death. It was clear we had to move fast or be swamped the second we touched the water, but no officer was aboard, no one from the ship's crew to take charge, just passengers in panic. One of the stokers shouted, "Someone find the pin that releases the ropes and pull it," but no one knew where it was. We scrambled, feeling blindly along the floor, bumping shoulders, reaching across legs and life belts. 60, maybe 70 of us crammed together. The boat finally hit the water, but we were still tethered, drifting in place as the exhaust stream blasted us away from the hull while the sea's swell pushed us right back into it. That tug of war carried us beneath boat number 15, descending fast, packed with men, and dropping straight toward us. "Stop lowering 15!" someone screamed. Our crew yelled. The crew of 15 yelled back, but we were 70 feet down. The sound didn't carry. Down came 15 to 15 feet, 10 feet, 5 feet, and then we felt it, the bottom of the boat scraping the tops of our heads. One more drop, and it would have crushed us all. Then, in a flash, a stoker lunged with a knife. "One," he said. Then, "Two," and the pulley rope snapped. A second later, the exhaust stream surged and swept us clear, just as 15 slammed into the water, filling the space we'd occupied seconds earlier. Our boats nearly kissed. We drifted out and finally got our oars into the water. The crew, mostly cooks in white jackets, sat two to an oar, while a stoker took the tiller. There was shouting, some confusion, but we voted the stoker as our captain and agreed to follow his orders. He led us toward the other boats, keeping close enough that we'd be easier to find when daylight came. It was just after 1 a.m. The stars shimmered above us, cold and quiet. No moon, but the sea was like glass. Not a wave, not a ripple, just the soft swell rising beneath us. It could have been peaceful, if not for the bitter cold and the knowledge of what we'd just escaped. Final silent descent. In the distance, she loomed, massive and unreal. Her length stretched across the horizon like a shadow carved from steel, her lights blazing defiantly against the stars. Every porthole burned bright, every saloon glowed as if nothing could ever go wrong. And yet, the bow was dipping, subtly at first, but unmistakably, the front end now swallowed to the lowest row of windows. Around 2 a.m., we saw her begin to sink rapidly, the bridge and forward decks vanishing beneath black water. Then came the moment none of us will ever forget. She rose, the Titanic, once majestic, tilted straight up, her stern towering into the sky, a monolith of silence and sorrow. The lights, unwavering until now, flickered once, then went out for good. From deep within her hull came a groan, a roar, the shriek of machinery ripping through steel as it fell, spiraling down into the abyss. It was a sound that didn't belong to this world, yet it wasn't the end. She stayed like that, upright, for minutes, black and skeletal against the stars, until at last she slid, almost gently, into the sea, gone, just like that. And then came the worst sound of all, the screams, hundreds, men, women, children, thrashing in the icy water, crying out into the night, begging for help, for life. But we couldn't go back. If we did, our boat would tip, and every one of us would be pulled under too. We sat in silence, trembling, crying, clutching one another, forced to listen, unable to save a single soul. That was the last time any of us ever saw the Titanic, and it's a sound that's never stopped echoing in our hearts